So then we go to the main event. It's the men's ladder match with Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, Omos, Madcap Moss, and Riddle. They all make their entrance when Adam Pearce comes out to add Theory. So it is an 8-man ladder match. Omos is dominating at the beginning until he gets knocked out of the ring by a Claymore. We see Moss and Riddle fighting on the ladder when Omos returns and takes both down, and he grabs Theory for a chokeslam. And then Omos starts to climb the ladder when Moss and Drew tip it over. And Riddle and Sheamus start attacking Omos with ladders, and everyone buries him underneath the ladders. The one miscue here was that he had about a dozen ladders covering him. And then like 8 minutes later, you just see him climbing through the ropes back into the ring. You needed to have like the big arm come from underneath, the big just throw all the ladders off. Instead, we didn't even see how this guy got under the rubble. It was like, come on.
Arm up. Yeah. I mean, he's very much a comic book character, Omos is.
Do the comic scene where he comes back to life. Instead, we just casually see him like climbing over the top rope. It's like, I'm back, guys. Rollins is alone at one point climbing up. Zayn was very funny in this match. Like, he played the role perfectly. Like, when everyone else was down, it was his chance, and they just constantly bring up that he's going to sit on this thing for a year if he wins it. We see Riddle start to do Randy spots on Sheamus with the draping DDT, and then climbs the ladder in the corner and hits a floating bro to 4 of the guys on the mat. That looked very spectacular. This is when Omos comes back. We see a haluva kick delivered to Omos, and then a brogue kick, and Riddle applies a triangle as Moss dumps Omos over the top to the floor. Rollins hits him with a stomp, and then all of them join together, clearing the announcer's desk, and they deliver a 7-person shield powerbomb to Omos, putting him through the desk. And Pat screams, "We'll be watching that for years." Years we will be watching this powerbomb through the desk.
Okay, yeah. Maybe he will. You know, he'll cue it up once a year and just go back to this.
I don't even think we're going to be ever referencing Sammy Guevara getting tossed off the top of the blood and guts cage.
I almost forgot it that night, John.
That was on Wednesday.
Oh my goodness.
There's a bigger lesson to be learned from a lot of these big matches of all these insane stunts, and they are forgettable.
Yeah. I think
there is a numbness to them.
Definitely. I think it helps if you frame it as like a point of significance in a match that leads to the finish, for instance. And that Sammy Guevara dive, as you know, cool as it was, did not play into the finish.
Like, it's like, to me, it's the ones that are beaten into your head, and like Seth Rollins cash in. They bring that up. It's got to be once a month on WWE television. They bring up that cash in. Jericho, like every month in some promo, he would bring up beating Rock and Austin in one night. Yeah. Like, that's how you hammer that stuff into people's heads because of constant reminders.
Well, maybe we'll hear the night, 6 or 7 people powerbombed Omos through a commentary table night after night.
You're right. We might be shortchanging Pat's prognosis. Drew climbs with Sheamus underneath the ladder, so the dog runs in and applies a sleeper onto Drew, and he gets attacked by Sheamus. Then it's Sheamus climbing with Drew underneath, and Drew is powering the ladder up off of his back.
Bench pressing, yeah.
Yeah, and then Claymore's Butch. Drew and Sheamus then are tipped over by Zayn. Zayn gets stopped by Moss. Moss is stopped by Rollins, who stomps him. And then we've got Rollins and Riddle fighting, which leads to an RKO off the ladder for a huge pop. Riddle climbs, and this is when Theory returns, and they battle on top of the ladder until Riddle is dropped, and Theory is there to grab the briefcase at 25 minutes and 31 seconds and take, as Michael Cole quoted, the selfie of a lifetime. That was his big call for Theory. The selfie of a lifetime. And Theory is your briefcase holder.
So when something happens like this, where somebody unannounced ends up winning the match, like, how does that affect like the betting lines and draft?
You and I had the exact same thought because it was kind of hinted to me that to expect this. And when they were promoting the DraftKings thing midway through the show, it's like, and pick who's going to win the ladder match. And I thought the same thing. Like, how does DraftKings like handle it? Is it just, this is pro wrestling, this crazy stuff happens, but it's like, It's really weird when you're in bed with a gambling outfit and you're doing this stuff where it's like you have a drop down menu of 7 people to pick who's going to win, and none of them are going to win, and you know this.
This is why like the G1 pool is usually so it works so well. And by the way, it is coming back, everybody, for this year. So we'll probably announce details very shortly. But the G1 usually works out well because you don't just have, people announced right before a match that they'll be entering. Anyway, but the WWE and sports entertainment in general and wrestling in general is different. And I think it makes it fun, the fact that it's unpredictable and stuff like this can happen.
It also opens up to this stuff being taken advantage of too, of those that are aware of this kind of stuff.
You mean like for gambling purposes?
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
But so but that goes for any pro wrestling, and that's what when you're taking betting on pro wrestling, you're taking that risk. Like,
so from what I can tell, like DraftKings you're kind of playing for credits. Like you're not playing for real money, right? Like it's like funny money, or I don't know. I thought it said on
the thing you could win, like play for free for $10,000 or something.
Somebody explained it to me that it's not directly like just betting, like it's more like for fun, and then I don't know, something else. Somebody can do a better job of explaining it. If I was in charge of like legitimately trying to like collect people's money for this, I would just throw everything out at this point and just like return, like everybody gets their money back, right? Like what can you do in a scenario like this?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not my area of expertise, but it's like when you're DraftKings and you're getting into pro wrestling, like that's the kind of stuff you invite.
Yeah,
it's
anyway. The match itself, as we spent 5 minutes talking about the DraftKings.
I thought it was like a nice ladder match. I don't think it was one of the more memorable ones, but it was, it was certainly like well laid out. Like you had a lot of great talent in this match overall. Even Omos, like I think they built around several spots of him that were, he was like heavily involved. I won't even say heavily involved, but he had his moments that were maximized.
Agreed. I thought they did a great job with Omos in this one. I mean, he came out of the match as the person maybe outside of Austin Theory who gained the most. They made him like, I will never say anything bad about like a giant entering the Money in the Bank because they provide so much for everybody else to do. Like the power bomb, we're going to be talking about it for decades to come, John. It made for an incredible moment there.
Yes. We got an all-time legendary moment that we'll be talking about for years, and one of the greatest matches Pat has ever seen. All in one show.
It was a monumental night tonight.
Yes.
But I thought overall it was a very entertaining match. I thought they did a great job with him. Theory felt a bit more understated to me, but I guess it doesn't matter so much because he
did it feel like a tip off when he came out that he was winning this?
I thought there was still a possibility he wouldn't, but the fact that he did win,
I think it made all the sense in the world. After he lost to Lashley, putting him in this, I think it was a clear sign that this was the guy. Like, why else put him in this?
Exactly. Like, if we're looking at the template of a Money in the Bank winner, like you think of somebody like The Miz, who, after you drop the U.S. title, you're in line for the world championship, and the briefcase is essentially just it's like a coupon to redeem a world championship run at some point. And this is the
one thing is that for SummerSlam, they are really hitting it hard that the winner of this match is going to be prone for a cash in, and I just don't know how many people see Theory at that level, that Theory could come out of SummerSlam as your champion. And that was my argument for like a Rollins or even a Drew. Mm-hmm. I will tell you though, for Drew, like I think there would be a lot more, if this were a number of years ago and Theory wins this, I think there would have been a little negativity because you would have had that sentimental favorite, not to use a Liv Morgan term, but like that person did not exist in this match. I think they want to characterize Riddle as that, but it's like, we don't have a Bryan Danielson. That's like the whole crowd is behind and would have been really disappointed if he lost. So with Theory, I think it's sort of indifference. Like, sure, he could win it. And Drew, for someone that we're looking at as potentially headlining this Wales card, like I can't say like he's red hot at this moment.
I agree. I think there are a lot of great Drew moments like throughout the match. He still feels like, the default like real lead babyface of the match. But is there that much of a craving for people to want to see him as champion right now? I don't necessarily think so. And you're right.
Like when he was climbing the ladder, like it's interesting when you get those spots where it's like the guy's alone on the ladder and you get to gauge the crowd. And it's not like they were going wild when he had those teases of like getting near the briefcase.
If Cody was around, he would have been that person in this match.
Definitely.
And maybe he would have won it, So, that's the other thing about all this that makes it really interesting. Like, I mean, so John, you are letting me know that you were at least tipped tip towards this at some point. How
this afternoon I was told by one person that theory was winning this. I didn't have it like confirmed beyond one person, but
so I'm curious, like, was this always in the works? Like when did things change? Was theory always going to be a part of this? And what becomes of the John Cena rumored match at SummerSlam?
Those are all big questions. Like I don't know when they made the call on theory. Like I found this out in the afternoon. So with Cena, it sounds like if you take the promo at face value about Cena, like not knowing when that next, he said like, I'm going to have another match. I just don't know when it's going to be. You could certainly have that question. Like, is SummerSlam locked in or is that in flux?
Interesting.
Cause he hasn't been advertised for any more appearances until SummerSlam. And, you saw how much tickets moved. It's not like you want to just hold off Cena if you've got him booked for any Raws coming up. Like you would want to make that, that's someone you announce ahead of time.
And in the preview, you brought up the idea of, whoever wins this briefcase potentially defending it. Do you think Austin Theory will keep the briefcase until he cashes in?
I think he does hold on to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like
I don't look at him as someone that they see as like they seem very invested in Theory. And I feel like they are going to, this is one where I think they're going to hope by the time they do the cash in with this guy that he is at a certain level.
Man, it still feels really early, for an Austin Theory championship run. Like this US title run, I think has been as forgettable, honestly, as any US championship run. Yeah. So they're going to have to do a lot of
promos for the next 4 weeks about going after Reigns or Lesnar.
Yeah.
And maybe that's his whole role at SummerSlam. If the Cena match is not locked in, like that's it. And like, that's a tough role for him that people do not buy him in today.
The level of star power is just so wide between Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar and where Austin Theory is currently. So they have to do a lot of work. The part of me thinks that he's not going to be able to cash in at SummerSlam. It just feels too obvious, though, But I mean, they could. I feel like there's more value in him keeping it throughout the year and just having that spotlight threatening, several times. But even so, like it makes you wonder what his role will be even come WrestleMania. Like this seems to like suggest that he'll be in some sort of big, prominent, potentially title match. And I just can't see it with him right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clear. Like that is somebody they are pretty invested in. So that's not surprising to me, but I think like there is a distance from kind of the valuation of Theory and where he is.
I could have seen it with The Miz by the time Miz won Money in the Bank. It's hard for me to see it with Theory. Just on the DraftKings note, Jesse here says on DraftKings, you can vote if the winner held the briefcase before or if they never won it before. Okay. All right. Interesting. And then somebody else here says that you can actually, Gabe says it's free. You can win money that you can cash out and keep or use the winnings to bet on other sports. So
yeah, there's obviously,
I got to get in on this. I got to get some tips and make some bank.